This morning we'll be back in the Psalms of Ascent. We'll be starting at Psalm 127. But before we do that, Brother Moyer, would you open us in a word of prayer? Thank you, sir.
Father, thank you, Lord, for what you do for us. Lord, thank you for allowing us to be here today. And Lord, I pray you be with our services today. Be with Brother Jeremy as he speaks. And Lord, give me the word for today too. And Lord, I thank you for all you do for us. And we commit this all to you. In your name we pray. Amen.
This morning we'll be back in the Psalms of Ascent, Psalm 127, 128. We've been using these Psalms as an illustration of us moving towards Jesus, of us learning to walk in the right direction. This morning we're going to look at two of them. They have some similarities. They both deal with family. They both deal with work. But you'll see one of them kind of has this feeling of why does it even matter, or what's the use? It's full of frustration and vanity and uselessness. And the other one is the exact opposite. The other is a picture of accomplishment and fulfillment and fruitfulness. And so we're going to try to look at these two Psalms and see what we can learn. The idea is, how do we move from this frustration into this picture of fulfillment? Psalm 127, except the Lord build the house, they labor in vain that build it. Except the Lord keep the city, the watchman walketh but in vain. It is vain for you to rise up early, to sit up late, to eat the bread of sorrows, for so he giveth his beloved sleep. Lo, children are an heritage of the Lord, and the fruit of the womb is his reward. As arrows are in the hand of the mighty man, so are children of the youth. Happy is the man that hath his quiver full of them. They shall not be ashamed, but they shall speak with the enemies in the gates. And Psalm 128. Blessed is every one of us that feareth the Lord, that walketh in his ways. For thou shalt eat the labor of thine hands, happy shalt thou be, and it shall be well with thee. Thy wife shall be as a fruitful vine by the sides of thine house, thy children like olive plants round about thy table. Behold, that thus shall the man be blessed that feareth the Lord. The Lord shall bless thee out of Zion, and thou shalt see the good of Jerusalem all the days of thy life. Yea, thou shalt see thy children's children, and peace upon Israel. Psalm 127, we get this picture. Remember, we get this picture of you're going to labor in vain. You can do whatever you want to. You can work till exhaustion. You can sacrifice all of your time. You can give up everything, but still this picture it's painting for us is, you're going to achieve nothing. All of your work will achieve nothing. Then it goes on and illustrates it a little bit more pointed. It talks about you can actually build the house. Now, sometimes we take this as a picture of home, and you could do that, but this is really talking about the labor of building a house. You can get out there and build a house. You can spend days, weeks, months. You can spend all of your time. You can build this beautiful home. You can make sure that all of the trim is exactly right and you can't see a single seam. Brother John, you can put time and effort, and you can make sure that the floor is always cool when it's hot outside, and it's always warm when it's cold out. You can plan it down to the detail, but if somebody comes in and destroys it, then what was the purpose for all of your work? It's now empty. What was the use? And then it goes on and gives us one more picture. But Bill, this is a picture of the watchman. And sometimes we don't give credit to the watchman, and I would probably overlook this, except now I've had a wife that's had to work night shift, and I've had two sons that have worked night shift. And I know what happens when you work night shift is you give up the opportunity to do everything. 70, you're often like, can you give this to Josh? Well, the truth is there's a lot of times they would like to say yes to everything, but you just give up those opportunities if you're working night shift. While everybody else is doing something, they're sleeping. And you sacrifice birthday parties and holidays, and that's what it's giving us this picture of the watchman. He's sacrificing everything to be on the walls, to have alert, to try to protect the people. And he can do that day after day, week after week. But if the enemy comes in, what was the purpose of all of that alert, sacrifice, giving up, effort? It's empty. It's vain. It begins to paint this picture that we all experience at some level. At some level, we all have invested in something, and it just seems, why did this, what was the purpose? And that's the feeling we're getting out of Psalm 127. It can happen in businesses. It can happen in ministry. It can happen in relationships. We get to the place where we feel like life was wasted. When it comes to this thing, I've invested 20 years and it's wasted. What could I have done with that money? What could I have done with that time? After all, here's where I am. And that's the picture we're getting from Psalm 127. Psalm 128 could not be more different. Psalm 128 starts out this way. Blessed is everyone that feareth the Lord, that walketh in his ways. There's no frustration. It goes on and it gives us this picture of fulfillment. Verses 5 and 6 talks about, so see blessing all the days of their life. It's empty and fruitful. What's the use? Blessing all the days of their life. They'll experience peace. They'll see fruit in their children. They'll see to their grandkids. And so these two Psalms, you get the picture of a frustrated life and a fulfilled, fruitful life. The question for this morning is, how do we move from frustration to fulfillment? And Justin, we're gonna look over a few things here in Psalm 127 that are just thrown out there, but really we're gonna look at it this way, because that's our purpose. That's where we want to be. We're gonna look at the idea of how are we successful? What is the picture of success, and how do we get there? And that's where we're going to get. But I do want to point out a few things from Psalm 127, because I think it's just stuff that we tend to overlook. I say this too. Probably should say this. You know, oftentimes when you're speaking, Dr. Lewis, oftentimes when you're speaking, you'll say stuff like, because there's an associate in there, everybody experiences frustration in this area. And, you know, sometimes people are like, okay, not me. And they just listen on. But I'm very safe in saying everybody feels frustration in work and in home or in family. Because, see, you can go back to Genesis chapter 3. And in Genesis chapter 3, it goes this way. Adam, because of your sin, cursed is the ground. You are now going to toil and work with the sweat of your brow. There's going to be thorns. There's going to be thistles. There's going to be problems. There's going to be frustrations in your labor. And then to Eve, yes, you're going to have children, but there's not going to be a child that doesn't bring turmoil and pain and struggle. And everybody is going to experience frustration in these two areas. And so it begins to paint that picture for us. There's no work without frustration. There's no home without some pain. The nice thing is God has ordained both of them. No, there's really 4 areas of life God has ordained. He's ordained work. He's ordained the home. Then he's ordained government. And he's ordained the church. So, 2 of the 4, it's guaranteed frustration. There's going to be struggle. Now, God wants to enter into that struggle. But God wants to enter into your family and to your work. And what he wants to do is he wants to help move us from frustration and you can't do it. It's going to end up vanity to a place where blessed is the man that feareth the Lord in all that he does for all of his days. And so he wants to move from one picture to another. Now, back to 127, just a few things we can get out of this. I'll just throw these out there. Preacher, oftentimes we kind of picture God is a spirit. And so we get this picture like he's only interested in spirit things. Character kind of things. But it says, unless the Lord builds. And the problem with that picture, Brother Bill, is he's also the creator. And there is nothing that he didn't build. And he's planning on building with. In fact, every time we have some new problem and some scientist or engineer or general overall nerd gets together to solve this new problem with some new process or new item, okay, they've got that ability and all of those raw materials from the builder who set it down for him. So I want you to understand, there is great honor in building. Because when we build, we're representing the character of God. God's a builder. And not only is he a builder, but he's a protector. And it gets this picture of the watchmen. Watchmen protect. They protect others. Policemen, military, judges. I want to say lawyers, but parents, insurance agents. Just think of all the occupations we have that really the purpose is to protect others. Doug, as Christians, as children of God, we're supposed to protect. When we protect, we reflect the very character of God. Now, we want to look at it this way, and it's good. We should protect the helpless. We should protect the poor. We should protect young people. We should protect women as men. We should protect minorities. We should protect truth. We should protect creation. Justin, if we would turn this into a question and answer, there'd be no time left. I wouldn't get past this page. So we could just keep coming up with things that we're supposed to protect. We're supposed to be protectors. We should not allow or condone abuse or waste. We were here to protect. We're not here to sit idly by it and watch it be destroyed. That is our role. And the third thing we get from Psalm 127 is God nurtures. He nurtures those children. They're a heritage from the Lord. And anytime we nurture, we're reflecting the nature of God. It doesn't take anything to ridicule or to abandon or to ignore, but to invest in, to give grace, to give time, to give up thought and preparation, to invest our money, to have a conversation with. These things are nurturing others, and in doing so, we're showing forth the character of God. And I'm going to tell you, my children are grown. Preacher, we looked for a church for like 6 months, and I mean, we were really looking. And the first time we visited here, it was so exciting. Because I know I can't raise my children alone. You need a church family. You need a third-party adult to invest in those children. I'll just use a couple of illustrations. You know, Matt, if you see Wesley all frustrated, just to pull him off to the side and start to have a conversation is nurturing to him. It changes his life. I did that once 3 years ago. I can't walk in the building without Wesley coming up, grabbing my arm, hitting me in the back of the leg, wanting to talk. That's needed. Okay? Understand, when you have a conversation with, I don't know how old he was then, a 7-year-old, you're representing the character of God. If you catch Webby and he's off by himself, if you pay attention, Webby's often off by himself. And you just compliment him. He'll be a little awkward. But then he'll give you a nickname. He'll punch you and run by. He's going to know you care about him. That gives confidence. That's needed. Children need that. This is usually us. Oh, yeah, if I see that one acting up, I'll get on him. He's got parents for that. You know what he needs? Pull him off to the side and say, what are you going to do when school's out? Because if he's acting up, he wants attention, you just gave it to him, he'll come up. I'm going to fly to the moon. I'm going to get a new car. I'm going to earn $200. He'll come up with something. But understand, when we nurture young people, we're showing the character of God. God nurtures. Parents, coaches, teachers, most importantly, church family. We should be nurturers. Now, really what we want to look at is this idea of how can we be successful? How can we move from frustration to fulfillment? And two questions. Where does this success come from? And what does this success look like? That's really all we're going to try to do. First, where does success come from? What makes a person successful? That's a huge question. Justin, it's extremely important, your answer to this question. What makes Justin successful? Because whatever your answer is to that question is where you're going to invest your life. It's what you're going to pursue. It's what you're going to seek after. So, if you actually ask that question, not in a Sunday school, ask it in a Sunday school and who knows what answers you're going to get. But if you ask that question at lunch, you're probably going to get answers like, well, talent, you got overall talent, knowledge, wisdom, opportunity, you got to have the opportunity. When the opportunity comes, there's got to be hard work. I don't want to say this, but there's a certain amount of luck probably involved because, you got to be right time, right place. Maybe it's just a combination of all of those things. When all those things work out, if you're ready and you work hard enough, then it's successful. And you could go, well, you can't go, I was about to say go to a bookstore, but I don't even know if there are any bookstores. You could search on Amazon the word success, and just by the sheer number of responses that are going to go up, you're going to find out, well, this probably isn't a very simple answer, but I'm going to tell you, in every one of those, you're going to hear some sort of that, some sort of those pictures. But I'm going to tell you, these two Psalms tell something different. They say success at any level, in any area of life, is a gift from God. And they do it two ways. First, in Psalm 127, verse 1, except the Lord build the house, they labor in vain that build it. Tells us kind of this side. If without the Lord, Matt, without the Lord doesn't matter. All of your labor is in vain. Build a house, put the work in, be the watchman, protect, guarantee, provide, put all of your effort and all of your sacrifice and all of your knowledge. It takes more than that. Without the Lord, the laborer, the builder, the watchman, it's vanity. As we learn to realize that, as we grow in this idea that it's not us, it's not our effort, it's not our knowledge, it's not I was right time, right place, right man, so there it went. Just as we learn to grow in that, we'll grow in humility and dependence. If he's the one that brings success, it's not me. I'll depend on him more. Okay. Now, the other we see in verse 2, which, by the way, for me, verse 2 isn't necessarily my favorite verse. I'll tell you why. Oh, it definitely wasn't at 2 o'clock in the morning. It is vain for you to rise up early, to sit up late, to eat the bread of sorrows, for so he giveth his beloved sleep. At 2 o'clock in the morning, I wasn't sleeping, and I wasn't doing very well, and I would gladly have picked up the phone, made you not sleep either. Preacher, look at 127 verse 2. Does this mean God doesn't love me? You're awake too, by the way. Does this mean he doesn't love you? If you've ever struggled with sleep, you read this verse, and that's not necessarily my favorite verse. But if you look at it, this is a great verse. This verse gives us the picture of one who is toiling for food. One who is working so that he can produce something to eat. Okay, it's almost the picture of the farmer, Brother Bill. You know what? This is what happens. During the day, you do what you can do. You sow the seed. Now, what good does it do for you to be awake in the middle of the night? Okay, we're not even today, where you have lights and air conditioning on your tractors. You got no air conditioning, you got no lights, you got no electricity, you got no tractor. You know what a farmer at this time could do in the middle of the night? Worry. Accomplish nothing. And that's the picture of this. Do what you can do, but in the end, if you have bread, it's up to him to produce. And he gives this, one of the shorter parables. He gives a parable of this in Mark chapter 4. It says exactly that, pretty much. Go sow what you can sow. But you can sow what you can sow, and in the end, it doesn't matter up to you. It's up to God to give the increase. And it'll start out as a little bitty tender plant, and then you're going to get a little bitty baby corn. And then by the time, if God blesses, you're going to have a multitude of big corn. And that's what God does. He takes a little bit of sowing and turns it into a big thing. All you have to do is be faithful in your little bit of sowing and then give the rest to God. There's a time just to go to sleep. I think we struggle in going to sleep because we don't do what we're supposed to do. Preacher, I worry and worry and worry because I know that I didn't sow the seed. So now I want to have no cost for not doing what I was supposed to do. Feed me anyway. I didn't invest the time. I didn't nurture. I didn't give effort. I didn't sacrifice. Bless me anyway. It gives us this picture of two different ways, but the conclusion is still the same. Success at any level comes from the hand of God. Now, Paul would tell us the same thing in the New Testament. Paul would say, I planted, Apollos watered. God gives the increase. That's just the way it works. Verse 1, without God, you can't succeed. With God, you really can't fail. God, I want you to have your way. He's going to do it then. It's going to happen. The first makes us humble and dependent. The second, Brother Moyer, makes us grateful. When we get to the place that he's blessing, we're grateful. And we praise him for it. Sometimes we try to generate praise and we try to generate thankfulness and we try to generate, gratefulness. And the truth is why we can't do any of those? Because we're so full of pride that we did it. Hard for me to thank somebody else for something I did. Hard for me to be thankful for something I had to put my hard sweat in. Conclusion. All success comes from God. So, what does success look like? How do we measure success? Because again, that's what we'll pursue. That's what we'll give our life to. When you boil it down, what is success? These two Psalms give us three answers. These three things fit in there. One, your wife flourish. Two, your children will live with honor. And three, the kingdom of God will prosper. Now, that is a far cry from if you read any of those books about success, and I've actually had to read some of them. I've been sent to seminars, them all Skill Pass seminars. I used to have so much fun at those Skill Pass seminars, Brother Hank. Because I'd just sit there for about the first hour, then they do their question and answer session, and I disagree with everything they say. And as soon as they try to say, well, we need to go on, then it's, well, didn't you start with there's no bad ideas? Until I think they complained about me, so the company quit sending me back. So I've been to a bunch of those, and that's not an exaggeration. I'm sure you can picture it. And then they got this brilliant idea about almost like in school. I'm getting paid, and I had to read a book. And then at our weekly meetings, I had to review the chapters. So no one else had to read the book. Ways to success. And in these things, here's the problem is success for them was more money or influence or power or happiness, define that, or the ability to have more leisure time. I spent some time at 2 o'clock in the morning looking up for a definition online. I found this one. A bunch of them go together, and they basically say this, so I like this one when I found it. Success is the ability to enjoy experiences that bring great pleasure in your life. Okay? That kind of fit with everything else. But you put all those things together, fame, fortune, power, happiness, experiences that bring great pleasure in your life, that's quite different from the way the Bible describes success. So what we want to do is look and see how the Bible describes success. Psalm 128, verse 3, thy wife shall be as fruitful vine by the sides of thine house. Now, Matt, if I was younger and somebody said that, like, I already had 3 kids, I don't want any more fruit. And it definitely is talking about having children, but I believe it's talking about way more. I believe it's a lot more than just the fruit of the womb, because it references that in a different place. About 5 or 6 years ago, somebody gave us, as a present, a blackberry bush. So, preacher, I'll put this, I don't really have a green thumb. I tend to kill everything. Here's an orchid. I just put an ice cube in it every week. It'll last forever. I probably had 20 of them out there dead. Haven't even gone out and thrown them away. Don't give me an orchid, please. But I love blackberries. So I decided, I read up, got the soil, went and purchased soil somewhere specifically for berries, kept up with this thing, and this thing was growing in a pot at the end of the pool for about 3 years. And it was, Justin, it was great. Every year, cut it back. Every year, hanging all over the place. And I love my little blackberry bush. Then it had this problem. Birds love my little blackberry bush too. So there were little blackberry deposits all around the backyard. So, man, I said, you know what? This bush has grown up. It's producing fruit. I'm just going to move it to the front yard, actually the side yard, because they can leave me whatever deposits they want to over there. I don't go over there. I don't even look at it. Don't care. So made sure it was in a sunny spot, thought I did my due diligence, planted that blackberry bush. It's been there for like 3 years now. I don't think I've even gotten a leaf off of it. It's different soil, it's different amount of sun. Even the water it gets has to filter through all that. I started looking. I got oak trees. They got leaves all over the place. It's changed the pH. It's changed all this stuff. I might as well just mow that thing down. It went from being this vibrant, live, producing thing to as soon as I moved the soil, sun, and water, it now is useless. It's a vain. It produces nothing. Now, I'm going to cross-reference that with it's called the grapevine, and I was a kid. I had to see two plants, both of them stuck in my head. I remember going to Tombstone and saw the world's largest rose bush. I think it's dead now, so somebody told me it died. I didn't look it up this morning, but I do think it's dead. It used to be, it was a saloon, and it covered the entire outdoor area was one rose bush, and you could go and you could see one stem coming out of the ground, and it was this huge thing. And even as a kid, 6th grade, Brother Hank, that was cool to me. I didn't care that it was a rose bush. I didn't care. Just the fact that one little bush produced all of this, and I couldn't get that out of my head. My dad got stationed in Germany, and my aunt and uncle came over there, took us to London. When we went to London, we went to a place called the Hampton House. The Hampton House has it's called the Grapevine, and it has a grapevine that was planted in the year 1769. One vine. And now that vine is 6 foot in diameter. And it produces every year. It brings a whole lot of money to the Hampton House because people travel all over the world to see this one vine. In fact, it's in its own greenhouse. And it takes up the entire greenhouse. Now you walk outside of this greenhouse, Justin, and there is this perfectly tilled ground. You can't walk on it. It's got fences all around it. Even back in the 80s, that fence was electrocuted. I mean, you're not running in there to get your Frisbee. Anything goes in there, you're leaving it alone. And, it's about the size of a basketball court, so it's in a little place. And so Matt, rowdy little kid, you just ask questions. Well, that's the main root system for the vine. And they fertilize it, and they protect it, and they do everything they have to do to keep that vine alive. That's what I want you to tell. Your wife, her roots are planted like right beside yours. And the soil, the sun, just going to get the same things from you. When it talks about your wife will be fruitful, what we're really talking about is, has it been good for her to be tied in with you? Are you helping her produce things like love, joy, peace, gentleness, meekness, temperance? Being tied in with you, does it bring frustration, anger, resentment, bitterness, hatred? Because in Galatians, those are in a different section. Brother Bill, if you want to move from frustration to fulfillment, one thing for certain is that your wife should become fruitful because she's tied to you. Now, how do I do that? Well, there's probably lots of things, but the most important thing is know this. With God, it's almost guaranteed. Without God, it's impossible. And so the first picture it gives us of success is this picture right here of the wife. The wife is going to be fruitful. The next one talks about our children. Verse 127, verses 4 and 5. As arrows are in the hand of a mighty man, so are children of youth. Happy is the man that hath his quiver full of them. They shall not be ashamed, but they shall speak with the enemies in the gate. They're not going to be ashamed. Donnie, you're going to be in a place where you're not ashamed of your children when they grow up and they leave home. They've been raised in such a way that when they move out, they're going to live with honor. In fact, it gives us the picture of at the gate. Now, we all know at the gate was like this place of legal trial. So, Bill, when they're standing in front of a legal trial because they've been accused, when their integrity has been attacked, you're not going to be ashamed. They're not going to lose their integrity. You won't be ashamed. Gives us two pictures of parenting. In Psalm 128, it gives us this picture of a tender plant, a tender olive plant. I've never sat around the table and said, you boys, I'm just so thankful. You remind me of tender olive saplings. Well, that's the picture it gives. And then it gives another picture in Psalm 127. It gives us this picture of sharpened arrows. And that kind of gives us a picture of parenting. As a tender sapling, it's tender. It's vulnerable. It needs fed. It needs protected. It needs strengthened. It almost needs like mother's wings wrapped around it. Because if not, it's going to end up on my porch with all the rest of those other dead plants. It needs investment. It needs taken care of. Okay, but there's this other side that you got to keep in mind. That there's a purpose for growing up this tender olive plant. And the purpose is to turn it into a sharpened, strengthened arrow that's going to be released and accomplish something. And it's no good if they're all just stuck right there. They're of no value right there. The arrow only accomplishes its purpose when it's aimed and released. But before it's released, it's got to be prepared. And both pictures are given here. But the result of nurturing the tender plant, the result of keeping in mind the purpose is to release a sharp and strengthened arrow, the result is we shouldn't end up ashamed. A couple things you got to keep in mind just quickly. Sometimes we struggle with sometimes we struggle with the rebellious child. Ben and I always ask this question: what's the difference between rebellion and leadership? Because they both have the same control and aggression and energy, and the only difference really is what you're fighting for. And that's where the parenting comes in. That's where the nurture comes in. We don't want to kill that desire. We don't want to kill that energy. We just want to aim it. And then, this is my personal opinion. My personal opinion is we have medicated and timed out this next generation of leaders, and we're really struggling. Because instead of growing them up and nurturing them, pointing them and releasing them, we're turning around and they're not there. They've been on Ritalin for 20 years. Here's an easy, what did the world do for 6,000 years pre-Ritalin? And then it gives us the third illustration. It says God's kingdom will prosper. It gives us the idea of Jerusalem's going to prosper. You're going to see it. You're going to see it forever. Well, we know Jerusalem is the center of God. It's his work in the world. So, just in a picture of success is that his kingdom is going to come. It's going to be affected, and it's going to be affected by you and I. That's why we pray, thy kingdom come, thy will be done. What we're really kind of like saying is, Lord, let my life not end without bringing light to someone, bringing truth to someone, affecting someone. How do we do that? There's probably a lot of ways. But one thing we know, without God, it's not going to accomplish. Without God, our labor is going to be in vain. Notice these three things he gives us as a picture of successfulness. Our wife's going to be fruitful. Our children are going to live with honor. God's kingdom is going to be affected. They're all eternal. None of those things are short-lived. None of those things are the car that's going to rust or the house that eventually is going to fall in, or all of those things have an eternal effect. Here, just two thoughts. One, and we're done. Time's there. But two thoughts. Brother Moy, I like when you get something like this, I like to have an illustration. I really like to have a biblical illustration. So we didn't point this out, but of these two Psalms, one of them Solomon wrote. Solomon only wrote two. Well, we only have two Psalms that Solomon wrote. One is 72 and one is 127. Now, so here we have this picture of three things. Let's see. Your wife's going to be fruitful. Your children are not going to make you ashamed, and God's kingdom is going to prosper. These are words, the wise words of Solomon. But if you look at Solomon's life, Solomon's like that picture in the end of, wise man built his house upon the rock, foolish man built his house upon the sand. Now here's the picture. Which are you going to be? The one that hears and ignores, stays the same, or the one that hears and obeys? Solomon didn't really pay attention to his own wisdom. Because if those three things are the three things, well, let's see. Solomon's wife is going to be fruitful. Which one? The 700 or the 300 or he just messed that all up. Oh, his children are going to bring honor. Well, his son's known for being incompetent and being mean and ruthless. The kingdom's going to prosper. Okay, well, it got split immediately and basically went into 400 dark years that ended in captivity. And there's consequences to not paying attention to 128 verse 1. But I still wanted an illustration. So I gave it a little bit more thought, and then I was about to give up, and then I felt like a dummy, which happens often. Because you know what the perfect illustration is? Well, he's our bridegroom. And as far as the wife, that's us. Brother Hank, he invests in us. And he plants the plant, and he fertilizes the plant, and he sends the sun, and he sends the water. And he's going to bring us from where we are to a place to be like him. We are going to be fruitful. We're going to grow in maturity. And we're supposed to show forth the attributes of God in just the same way. And then you take a look at his children. Well, I'm a child of God. And remember where he's pointed us. More than pointed us, he's pulled back and given us all the momentum and power that we need. And he's released us to go do a job. And then you get to, his kingdom's going to prosper. That's our job. And the gates of hell shall not prevail against it. It's the picture of success. Brother Bill, you close in a word of prayer this morning.